Today on The World, concern over the fate of political prisoners in Venezuela.
The international order didn't protect me and hundreds of Venezuelans that were imprisoned and tortured.
I'm Carolyn Beeler.
And I'm Marco Werman. Today, Venezuelans speak out. Also on the show, as if Gaza didn't have enough to deal with, the weather is making a bad situation worse.
Everyone in Gaza is overwhelmed. The needs remain so great, and the supplies are still far too few.
Plus, how a search for a Moroccan wedding song turned one bride into the musician she couldn't find. And
when you pay attention to the sky, it opens up for you, and there's just lots of things to see.
A 2026 stargazing forecast.
And much more, all today here on The World. This is The World. I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler. Thank you for joining us today. Iranians across the globe are watching the news from Tehran, where protests have drawn a harsh government response. Images from a medical examiner's office on state TV show body bags piling up.
When I see these videos coming out, there is a very familiar feeling of grief.
That's Marjan Kamali, an Iranian novelist living in Massachusetts. She wrote The Lion Women of Tehran. The grief and the hope are familiar for a reason.
In the diaspora, those of us who live outside of Iran, we've seen these scenes before, and we're always filled with a mixture of admiration and fear.
Like so many others, she's been trying to reach loved ones in the middle of a communications blackout, keeping those outside the country in the dark.
It's very, very scary to message them, to see nothing go through. Even landlines don't work. When you call, there's some strange robotic recording that comes on. My cousin, who has more friends inside of Iran and more family members inside, and one of her friend's moms is in the ICU. And this is something, a situation where you would normally need to get updates.
The World's Shirin Jafari starts us off today. So, Shirin, we'll talk about those families we just heard about and the challenges of getting their news out to the world. First, though, the latest. President Trump has put out a new message about Iran. What is he saying?
Yes, today in a post on social media, Trump said that the Iranian people should continue protesting and to, quote, take over your institutions. He was sort of talking and addressing the Iranian people. We know that the U.S. and Iran have been trading messages about possible negotiations, but Trump said today in that social media post that he has canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the killings stop. And he said help is on the way. It's unclear what that help is going to look like, but this is a fast-moving story, so we'll keep an eye on that. In the meantime, the protests are continuing on the ground in Iran, and so does the bloodshed.
Yeah, and we're seeing estimates of the number of dead and detained in Iran. Human rights groups based outside the country are painting a really grim picture. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's hard to know exact numbers at this point because of the limited communications. Some of these organizations have put the death toll in the thousands, Marco. From the videos that have come out so far, we can see the death toll is high. As the connectivity is restored, we'll get a better sense of the extent of the deaths in Iran. Meanwhile, Iranians outside of the country are seeing these videos and the headlines every day, and they're desperate to get news of their loved ones.
Yeah, that has got to be so hard. I mean, we got a sense of that a moment ago from Marjan Kamali. We are talking about a lot of people in the Iranian diaspora, generations of people who've left the country since the start of the Islamic Revolution in 1979, right up to the present day, right?
Right. And more recently, inflation, the collapsing economy, repression, lack of basic social freedom, all of that has forced many people out of the country. And so Iranian families are spread across the world. All of these people still have ties to the country. They have family, they have relatives, and they visit some of them. In the past 5-6 days, they've been agonizing over how to reach their loved ones. Some have older parents who need medical care. I've also heard from parents who have been separated from their children. They were on a visit to Iran and now they're stuck. There's no way for them to get out.
Shirin, when it comes to getting through the information blackout, are people successful in getting through to their relatives in Iran?
People are trying everything, Marco, and there have been some limited success in getting through. Today, I heard from some people who have been able to call from inside Iran using landlines, and some have miraculously been able to connect to WhatsApp. It's just so sporadic and unpredictable. Another way that people have been connecting to the outside world from inside Iran is using Starlink, which lets you connect online via satellite. But these are expensive devices and they have to be smuggled into the country. And so very few people have access to them. The government has been jamming Starlink too. They've been also going around and confiscating these devices, and they've arrested anyone who has them. They show this on state TV as a way to scare people. This is a tactic that they used. But I should also add that Iranians have been getting innovative too. Satellite TV channels outside Iran are still accessible inside the country. Some families I've seen, they send messages to their loved ones to these satellite TV channels and they air them on their programs. You know, things like, we're okay, we're thinking of you, don't worry about us, and then name of the relative that they're trying to reach. And these channels show these messages on their programs. But of course, this is a one-way conversation, right? There's no way for the families inside Iran to respond to these messages.
Yeah, so Iranians in the street want the world to know the details of what they're going through. That, of course, is hampered by the Iranian forces of law and order that don't want change. How long can this go on for?
One thing is clear. These protests might end in the short term just because of the level of brutality by the security forces. But that doesn't mean this is going to be over. Iranians have been protesting on and off for a long time. And as long as their grievances are not met, they will continue to protest. The government doesn't seem to be addressing any of the underlying issues that people are protesting for. It has lost so much credibility that a lot of the population at this point want them gone. For these people, there is no fixing this government.
The world's Shirin Jafari, thank you very much for this.
You're welcome, Marco.
Venezuela's government says it is releasing what it calls an important number of political prisoners. President Trump is already taking credit for that as part of negotiations with acting President Delcy Rodriguez. So far, though, only a few dozen people have been freed. 800 political prisoners remain behind bars. Human rights groups say many of them are held in harsh conditions with documented cases of torture and deaths in custody. The World's Tibis Isaiah reports from Caracas, Venezuela.
Outside Zona 7, a prison in Caracas, families pray for the release of a group of political prisoners who they believe are held here. Many have been camping out since Thursday. That's when they learned that a detainee had died inside this prison.
Desaparecido. ¿Por qué?
Milady Mendoza is looking for her disappeared husband, a police officer. She says he was taken from the station where he worked so officers could search his phone. He's been missing since November.
La información que nos dieron fue que era por información celular, del teléfono, que le iban a hacer un vaciado de teléfono,
In recent months, people have been jailed for helping the opposition campaign, criticizing the government, or supporting a U.S. invasion on WhatsApp or social media. Evelyn Chiaro, who's searching for his missing son, says she's gone to every prison and nothing.
Necesito saber dónde está mi hijo. Necesito saber si está vivo.
I need to know where my son is. I need to know if he's still alive, if he breathes, she says. Eventually, she also got a tip that her son was being investigated for terrorism and homeland treason. Rights groups say that language has become routine. Alfredo Romero is with the NGO Foro Penal.
Everyone that's been detained is referred to as terrorist or is being charged as terrorist.
Since the disputed 2024 presidential election, the government launched a crackdown known as Operation Knock Knock. Security forces were going door to door to detain people suspected of supporting the opposition.
No seas llorón, vas pa tocorom.
In this video, Maduro sings, "Knock, knock, who is it? Don't cry, you are going to prison." Something that many Venezuelans see as mocking the suffering of detainees. Last year, a 65-year-old doctor was sentenced to 30 years in prison for sending a voice note encouraging her neighbors to vote against Nicolás Maduro. Some of those people are now being released, but slowly. Human rights activist Oscar Murillo says there are internal divisions within the regime and some people don't support the release of any political prisoners.
Pero también es verdad que hay un desorden administrativo, burocrático.
He also says the interim government is paralyzed by confusion with no clear chain of command to authorize releases.
Tenemos registro de centros de reclusión donde el agua potable solamente llega un día por semana.
Murillo adds that Venezuela's prison system is collapsing with overcrowding, scarce food, and water that sometimes arrives only once a week. The United Nations has documented a pattern of arbitrary detention and torture in Venezuela for over a decade, targeting people seen as political opponents. More than 15,000 people have been imprisoned, according to Venezuelan human rights group Provea. Those who are freed are not truly free. Murillo says their cases remain open, many are barred from speaking publicly, and some cannot leave the country. Back at the vigil, Vicente Bravo, who's also searching for his missing son, says releases so far have focused on high-profile detainees, the ones who might please President Trump, he says.
Hay presos que no tienen rostro, hay presos que no tienen nombre, hay presos fantasmas.
There are prisoners with no faces, prisoners with no names, ghost prisoners, he says. He's demanding the release of all of them. Former opposition lawmaker Freddy Guevara, who spent a year behind bars on terrorism charges in Venezuela, says releasing political prisoners is key to a transition.
You know, for us, this is not a discussion about legal frameworks or institutions or theoretical frameworks. This is about real lives, torture, imprisonment, exile, families broken apart, a country held hostage for more than 25 years.
Guevara says Venezuelans now don't have the luxury of discussing the legality of President Trump's actions.
And this is what I want to be very clear. I'm not asking anyone to agree with how this happened, but I'm asking you to not abandon Venezuelans now that this happened, because it is the biggest opportunity we have in a long time.
He's urging the international community to push for the release of political prisoners in Venezuela because, he says, his country cannot rebuild without a process of justice and reconciliation. For the world, I'm Tibisay Sea in Caracas, Venezuela.
In Malawi, the current president is locked in a legal dispute with the former president. It's a custody battle over who gets the presidential security dogs.
The dogs used to live in the presidential palace in the capital, Lilongwe. The security detail there includes 3 Belgian Malinois and a Dutch Shepherd. The former president of Malawi, Lazarus Chakwera, moved the dogs to his private residence after he lost the election. But the newly elected president, Peter Mutharika, protested, saying the dogs are public employees and not for anyone to take home.
Following that logic, Mutharika sent dozens of police officers to Chakwera's home to retrieve the dogs, only for Chakwera to refuse to open the door. That's according to the Wall Street Journal.
The standoff prompted the president to take the matter to court. For now, the legal fate of the dogs remains uncertain, as does their permanent address.
You're listening to The World. This is The World. I'm Marco Werman. Memes on social media reacting to this year so far can be summed up like this. Can we just hit fast forward to 2027? Well, if you need a break, consider casting your eyes upwards because over the next 11 and a half months or so, there are some very cool celestial events in store for earthbound eyes. Phil Plait is a professional stargazer. He's an astronomer and contributor to Scientific American. He started by laying out the headline happenings in the heavens.
Well, the big one this year is on August 12th, and that's going to be a total solar eclipse. That's a magnificent event. I've seen one myself. The problem is it's over a very narrow part of the world. You have to be in Iceland or Spain and areas like that. In the rest of the world, you'll get a partial eclipse, which is still pretty neat. And I suggest looking it up and making sure you observe it safely, which means having the right kind of eye protection, because looking at the sun is not a great idea without it.
Yeah, for sure. So where will be the best cloudless viewing of this eclipse with the longest period of total darkness?
Ooh, well, I'm not a magician and I can't predict the future that well, but I would guess central Spain because in that time of year, it tends to not have too much rain there, and it's just a cool place to be anyway.
Will you be going to check this one out in person?
Oh, I wish. I did see one in 2017. I'd love to see another one, but this year it was not to be.
People in different regions of the globe will see different things, though, and I don't want to ignore them, but let's orient this conversation around what will be visible primarily over North America. What are the things that people on this side of the world will be able to see?
Well, there's a lunar eclipse on August 27th and the 28th, and that's a pretty good one. There are actually two this year. There's one before the solar eclipse as well. And those are fun because you can see them from anywhere on Earth that is facing the moon at that time, and you can watch the shadow of the Earth move over the moon over the course of an hour or so. And once the moon is completely in Earth's shadow, it can turn a blood red, which is an amazing thing to see. And you don't need any special equipment. You can just go outside and look at that. So that's always a lot of fun.
What about any meteor showers to look forward to this year?
Every year we get meteor showers as Earth passes through the debris tail from a comet. And so because the Earth goes around the sun once a year, we pass through these things every year at the same time, and that's what produces the meteor shower. And two of the best ones this year are going to be two of the best because there's no bright moon to interfere with them, and that is the Perseids in August and the Geminids in December. Both of these produce up to or over 100 shooting stars per hour, although honestly, realistically, you won't see that many. But if you go out to a dark site, have a big area of sky you can observe and go out after local midnight, you will see dozens of meteors per hour, and it's a wonderful thing to do.
I mean, knowing that all this is coming up, it's really about mathematics and cyclical movements and the coincidence of several cycles overlapping in the single 12-month stretch. I mean, you astronomers have seen these events coming for years based on mathematics. How much unpredictability is there, though, in these celestial events? Like a meteor coming from out of the blue. Does that happen?
Yeah, there are what we call sporadic meteors, and there are roughly, 5 per hour. Those are usually bits of asteroids that got shattered in collisions. And it's just showing you that space is full of debris. I mean, it's mostly empty, but there is stuff out there, and when Earth plows through it, you do get those. There's also random comets. Sometimes a comet, which is basically a giant chunk of ice and rock from the outer solar system, gets close enough to the sun and heats up, and that's why you get the tail streaming away from it. Most of the time, those are predictable, but sometimes you get one that comes in and it gets a lot brighter than we expect, or it gets a lot more active than we expect, and it winds up being something you can see naked eye. There is no predicting these, and we had one last year, and hopefully we'll have another one this year.
So a big challenge with stargazing these days for many of us is light pollution. As an astronomer, if you could go anywhere, what are some of the ideal locations for everyday stargazing where there's the least amount of light pollution?
Well, that's a good question. I live in rural Virginia, and we get very dark skies here, but I also live in a forest, so I don't have a great view because the trees block my view a lot. I used to live in Colorado, and driving out west of the Rocky Mountains, or in the Rocky Mountains, incredibly dark skies. So any place you can get that is farther away from cities, even towns, is best to see most of these things, especially meteor showers, because the sky gets lit up by buildings, street signs, traffic lights, everything. The farther away you are from all of that mess, the fainter an object you can see. And the sky above you, especially in the summer and winter when the Milky Way is up, it's just spectacular from a dark side. If you've never done it, it is something that is really worth trying.
Yeah, so get away from tree cover and obviously light pollution. Phil, what is the most impressive thing you've seen while stargazing?
Oh, that's a tough question. The total solar eclipse that passed over America about 8 years ago, that was really a life-changing event. It is so eerie and cool and beautiful and spectacular. But I've also seen stars that have exploded through big telescopes. I've seen star factories, gas clouds that are currently forming stars and planets. There's almost no losing when you know what you're looking for and you've got your eye to the eyepiece. You know what? I'll actually say Saturn. If you ever get a chance to see Saturn and Jupiter is really poised for great viewing right now. If you have a chance to see that through a telescope, it's amazing. Saturn's rings are visible, moons of Jupiter are visible. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, I've managed to make out a very small image of Saturn on a telescope a couple of years ago. Do you have a bucket list eclipse that you want to see? I mean, you know when these things are happening.
I have a friend who used to search all over the world and go to so many eclipses that he can't even remember all of them he's seen. And I'd love to see one where the sun is rising in eclipse. I think that would be really beautiful. But I've seen so many things. There's I don't know what's left. I've seen the aurora here and brilliant meteor showers, comets. It just, when you pay attention to the sky, it opens up for you, and there's just lots of things to see.
I can concur. I've seen a couple of total solar eclipses, and it is life-changing. But what is it, in your opinion, about witnessing events like this that can just touch humans so deeply?
I've written about this before, and because I've thought about it, especially after seeing the one that I saw in Wyoming. I think part of it is the buildup to it. It's not something that just happens and is over. It takes, a long time for the moon to cover the sun. In the last few minutes, the light changes. It gets eerie, and your shadows get sharper. The sky gets darker. Sometimes crickets will start chirping and birds will stop singing. And then it gets dark. The moon blocks the sun. It's like a deep, deep twilight. Stars will come out, and you can see the corona, which is the ethereal atmosphere of the sun, this spectacular halo surrounding it. And then it only lasts a few minutes. So it's this very ephemeral event. It doesn't take long. And so it's a little more precious that way. And because it is so beautiful and just odd, it's really striking. And I know people who have sobbed, wept openly during an eclipse. And I get it. I had a lump in my throat watching it. It was one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen.
Astronomer Phil Plait contributes to Scientific American. More global stories coming your way. Stay with us. You're listening to The World.
This is The World. I'm Carolyn Beeler. A fierce winter storm is pummeling Gaza. It's bringing heavy rain and wind and extreme cold to hundreds of thousands of displaced Gazans living in tents and other makeshift dwellings. Salma Altawil, who is in Gaza City, says staying warm and dry is all but impossible.
This night was extremely hard because the wind was very fast. I was hearing things that are flying and collapsing all over the night. So many tents collapsed. So it was very hard for all the people in Gaza. There was one home in Gaza City collapsed while the people were inside. Some were killed.
The plastic tents most people are living in cannot keep them or their things dry, Altawil told us.
Families are spending the whole day trying to dry all of their belongings inside the tent, their mattresses, their clothes, and trying to get the water out from their tents.
The wind sounds like it's ripping tents apart, she said, which keeps people up all night. And on top of that, the flu is going around.
You just see the people are extremely exhausted. My children were affected from this flu, and I spent the past 2 weeks just trying to take care of them. We do not have enough medicine, and the whole health sector is collapsed.
Salma Altawil there. She works for the Norwegian Refugee Council in Gaza. Her colleague Shayna Lowe spoke with us today, too. She's in the West Bank and keeping a close eye on the humanitarian aid situation in Gaza.
Everyone in Gaza is overwhelmed, both The people trying to stay dry and warm, as Selma described, while floodwaters destroy what remains of their belongings. And aid workers are overwhelmed because the needs remain so great and the supplies are still far too few. We're hearing reports of tents that were distributed just last week being blown away this week because even tents that are up to humanitarian standards cannot withstand the weather conditions in Gaza right now, particularly when everyone or most of the population is living in low-lying areas very close to the seashore where there's lots of heavy wind.
Do we know exactly how many of Gaza's displaced people, most of the population, are actually living just in tents or under tarps?
The most recent data that we have is that about 1.3 million people are in need of emergency shelter assistance. So some of those people are living in tents or makeshift shelters. Some of them may be living in damaged buildings, but the majority of the population in Gaza is living under very precarious conditions and in desperate need of assistance.
We know that people have died from collapsing buildings and also exposure. Is there a comprehensive sense of the death toll, specifically from environmental factors as opposed to the conflict itself?
I'm not sure what the figures are cumulatively. This is the third winter that Palestinians in Gaza have been forced to face these conditions. But I know that as of at least a week ago, at least 5 babies had died of exposure, and more than a dozen people had died as a result of building collapses from the heavy winds.
You have already mentioned a lack of ability to start rebuilding. Selma also mentioned that in her voice memo that she sent us from Gaza City. I want to play that for you and then ask you a question.
We are not just facing this winter crisis, we are facing a recovery that has not been allowed to begin. This is not a lack of efforts by humanitarian organizations. This is a lack of access. We are doing everything we can, but we are working with our hands tied.
She said a lack of access. Shayna, how much access do aid groups have to Gaza right now?
Very little, not nearly enough, and we're already seeing that the limited access that we have is shrinking. Now we're seeing not only that essential materials needed to improve shelters, needed to repair damaged buildings, not only are these supplies being blocked, but we're seeing aid agencies, including the Norwegian Refugee Council, that have decades of experience working in conflict zones around the world, being effectively blocked by Israel. Israel has not renewed our registrations. They've blocked our aid systematically for more than 10 months from entering Gaza. We've been unable to bring a single tent into Gaza directly, despite the fact that NRC has had supplies waiting in Egypt for a year now. And we've also seen that international humanitarian workers who have been supporting our colleagues like Selma, our local colleagues who have been working for the last 2 years tirelessly, we now are seeing that international aid workers are being blocked from entering Gaza and supporting the response as well.
Right. So that, I believe, is the latest here. Israel said earlier this month that it barred entry to Gaza for foreign medical and humanitarian staff who used to be able to cycle in and out of Gaza from organizations such as MSF, Doctors Without Borders. How many other groups did that impact?
Well, there are 37 groups whose registration effectively expired, Israeli registration, I should say, effectively expired at the end of the year. Israel introduced a new registration process early last year that is deeply flawed, requires international humanitarian organizations to disclose private information about their staff that we cannot disclose due to staff duty of care. We would never disclose this information to a party to a conflict anywhere. And also we're unable to because of data protection laws that many of us are contractually obligated to uphold. Much of the information that they are requesting is personal information, not just about the aid workers, but about their families, their networks. This is information that we would never disclose, particularly in a context where we've seen over 500 aid workers killed over a 2-year period in Gaza.
So when organizations decline to provide that information, Israel has then barred entry for foreign workers from those organizations to actually enter into Gaza now. Why does Israel say it's doing this, asking for names and other information about local workers for these aid organizations?
Well, the Israeli authorities claim that it's about vetting staff to ensure that they don't have ties to armed groups. Of course, we're impartial, neutral, humanitarian organizations. And so none of us would knowingly hire anybody that has ties to armed groups. But we and the sector has tried to negotiate with the Israeli authorities, even proposing neutral third parties to do vetting. And yet Israel has not engaged with us in having those conversations, in trying to find an amenable solution that would meet the needs of both parties.
Can you give me a sense of what percentage of the organizations that previously served Gaza now are not able to send people in?
It's 40 organizations that effectively have had our registrations expire or revoked, been deregistered. And many of these organizations are large organizations that are known. Organizations like the Norwegian Refugee Council, like Oxfam, like Save the Children, like Doctors Without Borders. These are organizations that are a massive part of the humanitarian response. We know what that's going to result in. More suffering for a population that's already suffered 2 years of devastation.
Shayna Lowe is with the Norwegian Refugee Council. She spoke to us from Nablus in the West Bank.
Turning now to Asia, specifically South Korea and Japan. For a good part of the 20th century, Imperial Japan maintained a brutal colonial rule over Korea. Today, the leaders of both countries pledged to work more closely to build stability in the region. South Korea's president is making overtures to help lower the temperature in Japan's diplomatic standoff with China. The World's Matthew Bell explains.
Japan's Prime Minister Sanai Takeichi welcomed the South Korean president today in the former imperial capital city of Nara. It's famous for its ancient Buddhist temples and the deer that roam freely there. Nara also happens to be Takeichi's hometown. In a joint news conference with President Lee Jae-myung, Takeichi mentioned, quote, the current strategic environment. That's an indirect reference to Japan's standoff with China over her comments about potentially defending Taiwan. She did not mention China specifically in this context, but Takeichi said she and President Yi confirmed close cooperation with the U.S., aimed at getting North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons. She said the two leaders also talked about working together on industrial supply chains, artificial intelligence, and searching for the remains of forced laborers from Korea recently discovered in an old undersea mine in Japan. Here's President Lee Jae-myung, who also talked about regional coordination.
저는 동북아 지역의 한중일 3국이
Yi did mention China, where he visited just last week and met with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. South Korea's president said that his government, China, and Japan need to find common ground as much as possible and continue to communicate. Yi and Takeichi mentioned the importance of working together with their strategic ally in Washington. For decades, the relationship between South Korea and Japan has been unpredictable and even fraught at times, especially around historical issues going back to Japan's colonial rule over Korea. But Jennifer Lind, an East Asia expert at Dartmouth College, says Yi and Takeichi seem committed to a different approach.
What we saw today at the summit was such a productive way to engage on this issue. And it's the kind of pragmatism and kind of respect and good faith that we have not seen in this relationship just time and time again.
As a politician, Lee Jae-myung has used some strident anti-Japanese rhetoric. So when he was elected South Korean president, some predicted another chapter of tense relations with Japan and its new right-wing prime minister. But Lind says Yi and Takeichi are engaging on tough historical issues for the sake of building closer ties.
when you have two countries that see the virtue and need to cooperate with one another in the security realm, it will shape how productive their conversations about the past will be.
Today, Takeichi said she welcomes efforts to identify those remains of more than 130 forced laborers from Korea who died in an undersea mine collapse in Japan back in 1942. South Korea estimates that the remains of 10,000 Koreans are still in Japan, yet to be identified. Jennifer Lind says working together to address painful historical memories is one of the clearest signs that these two countries want to work toward a closer relationship. For The World, I'm Matthew Bell.
The World is produced by GBH and PRX, broadcasting weekdays from the Nan and Bill Harris studio in Boston and from the Department of Communication at UC San Diego. Find us online anytime at theworld.org. I'm Carolyn Beeler.
And I'm Marco Werman. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.
The World is supported by the Carnegie Corporation of New York, working to reduce political polarization through philanthropic support for education, democracy, and peace. More information at carnegie.org. By the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. macfound.org. And by FJC, a foundation of philanthropic funds serving the nonprofit sector with donor-advised funds, fiscal sponsorship, bridge lending, and more. FJC.org. The World's theme music is composed by Ned Porter. The World is a co-production of GBH Boston and PRX. More information at theworld.org.